Two knives, equally matched in terms of equipment, design, and materials, both on the same mission. Only one can emerge the victor. This is an all-out brawl that can only be described as a knife fight. Today's two contenders are two very special knives. One is the KUNWU S-Tao, and the other is the Indiana Knives EDZ. Now, what makes these knives so special is that both of these feature the top of the heap super steel, which is Vanax. Now, if you're not familiar with Vanax, what makes it so special and so unique is that it will not rust. Ever. With most steels, even high carbon stainless steels that most knives are made out of, you're going to have the chance of having some rust, especially if you use them around salt water, near the ocean. These will never rust. There are a few other steels out there like H1 and LC200N that will not rust, but neither of them will hold an edge anywhere close to Vanax. If Vanax is such a super steel, you might ask, does it hold an edge well? And the answer is yes. Both of these knives did around 450 cuts in my edge retention test, although the KUNWU was slightly sharper at the end of that time than the EDZ was. This most likely has to do with the grinds of the knife. If you'll see, the KUNWU has a little bit less of a flat grind. The grind ends slightly above the spine of the knife, whereas the EDZ has a full flat grind that tapers all the way down to the edge, meaning that this knife has a little bit thinner of an edge than the KUNWU. So even though the heat treats are similar and the steel is the same, this one ended up being a little bit sharper because when I'm cutting wood in my edge retention test, it has a little bit more meat behind the edge. So round one narrowly goes to the KUNWU. In round two, I'm going to be slicing an onion and trying not to cry. Now you may ask, why in the world are you slicing an onion with two very expensive knives? Well, I am doing that because these are supposed to be EDC knives. And an EDC knife, or everyday carry knife, is supposed to be able to do whatever you end up needing to do with it because it goes with you all the time. It's an everyday carry. So it's what you have when you need something. So we're going to slice an onion and see which knife comes out on top. So here we go with the EDZ. I'm going to try to do very thin slices here. We're going to do almost like pickling slicing of this onion. So I'm trying to do paper thin slices here. And this is actually pretty successful. I am running out of blade though, so this is not a very long blade. So while I'm getting nice thin slices of onion, and they're sliding right off the grind, I am having trouble because I'm getting into that finger choil. Now let's do the KUNWU. It's gonna be much more, oh yeah, this is much more difficult. You can see I didn't make it all the way through the onion because that grind is steeper. So this knife comes to an edge like this, whereas the EDZ comes to an edge more like this, meaning I have to take thicker slices into the onion in order for this knife to not slide out halfway, as you can see it did there again. So round two, vegetable and food prep, definitely goes to the EDZ rather than the KUNWU. If we're all honest, what we do with our EDC knives probably most of the time is open packages. So round three is going to be opening packages. We'll start with the EDZ as usual. This is paper tape on both packages, so it should be about the same. So I'm sliding through the tape here, going long ways, and then out the other side. That was very easy. Well, let's try the KUNWU. So right away, I'm noticing that it's tougher to get that tip into the tape. It doesn't, you can see it slipped out. It doesn't want to dig in as much simply because this rounded radius wants to push the knife back out of my package. So opening packages, definitely easier with the EDZ knife. Round 4 is tough material and rope. So we're going to do both of these with both knives and then talk about how they do. We'll start with the KUNWU this time. So this is nylon fibrous rope. This is a straight edge blade, which typically does very well on this sort of thing. It's not going to slip out like some blade shapes would. That was very easy. Let's do this one. This is a shorter blade. So this does almost as well, although it's a little bit harder because I have to be a little more precise in where I place it. Otherwise, I'll get back off the blade. The other part of this round is going to be the zip tie challenge. So I'm going to take a zip tie off of this piece of wood with both knives. So here is the KUNWU. Not a problem. Here is the EDZ. Okay, so that was actually significantly easier because, again, that rounded tip makes it harder to get underneath the zip tie without digging into the wood. This one, the tip is narrower, so it gets in there much easier and pops it right off. The 5th and final round is going to be how the knife operates in your hand and how it feels, because let's be honest, when we're talking about EDC knives of this variety, most of us are using them as fidget spinners. We're flipping them, we're playing with them, they should be fun, and something this expensive should feel good in your hand and have a lot of good tactile feedback. So the KUNWU, first of all, has 3 opening options. It's got a front flipper, it's got a back flipper, and it has a thumb hole, which I can't really use. I can finger flick that knife, but the thumb hole is not really usable with my thumb because it's so close to the blade that or to the handle, that I can't really get a thumb in it, so I can't really open it with my thumb. The pocket clip is also a wire clip, which I don't really like because it's all bendy and flexy and not very comfortable. The frame lock on this also is very bendy. If you can see it, I can bend that frame lock around with just one finger, and that's not very comforting in a knife like this. So while this is very flippy and very fidgety, it doesn't quite measure up to the EDZ. This knife is weird. But weird in a good way. So it has this rounded flipper that goes all the way from the front, all the way to the back of the knife. So it doesn't really have a front or a back flipper, but this flipper functions as both. And it functions very well as both. You can see I can do it with my thumb, my finger. I can do the back flipper with my finger. On this one, the thumb hole does work. It also works as a finger hole for multiple fingers. This is the only knife I've ever had that I can open with literally any finger on my hand. And that's very fun. The lockup is also very secure. I typically am not a fan of button locks, but this one locks up very tightly, and I have disassembled this knife and I don't have any reservations about how the lock is going to work or hold up. This is a button lock that I actually like. So the fit and finish and fidget spinner aspect of these knives definitely go to the EDZ. So where does that leave us? Well, it's a pretty clear victory, despite the fact that the Tao is a larger knife and gives you a little bit more cutting surface. The EDZ definitely took the fight because it has so many more little functional things going for it, and it's just a sturdier feeling, more fun to use and carry knife. And that matters a lot when you're talking about cool knives at this price point. So this is our winner. You can look up links for where to find these down below. Hail to the champ.